So there are quite a few questions that came in from this morning, but I was also requested to give a chance for the Abbey residents to ask questions. We didn't do that yesterday. So if anyone here has a question you'd like to ask. There's actually one already from Venerable Lamsel, and this is one that I thought of as well, because this morning Geshe-la was talking about fire being dependent on smoke. So the question is, does the fact that we can have fire without smoke detract from Geshe-la's example about fire relying on smoke at all? So does fire necessarily depend on smoke? So yeah, I've heard there's such a thing as smokeless fire. What would be examples of that? Fire that doesn't produce smoke.
An iron.
Hmm?
An iron.
When an iron is heated up. Yeah, because I think the meaning of fire isn't necessarily actual flames. It's just something that hot and burning. So for example, electric stoves, that have those rings, or the more modern ones that don't even have the rings, but they get glow and they can cook. There's no flames coming up and no smoke, unless the food's burning. But the fire itself doesn't produce smoke.
That's not a fire.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Fire, the definition of fire is hot and burning, but burning doesn't necessarily mean actual flames. But at the time, what I think is at the time of, back in the past in India and Tibet, they probably didn't have fires without smoke. The only kind of fire they had was probably the kind that burns wood or burns cow dung or, some kind of fuel like that. So I don't know, my thought, I don't know what Geshe-la would say about this, but my thought is, if there is fire that doesn't produce smoke, then this explanation wouldn't work. But maybe we could take some other example of something that is a cause that definitely will produce a result. What came to my mind was a pregnant woman who's just about to give birth. So that's, there's a case, definitely a cause is going to produce a result. Or a seed that has all the conditions, the moisture, the heat, everything just about to turn into a sprout. So there you definitely will have an effect coming from that cause. And also he was talking about this, he was reading from this book. If any of you have this book called Ocean of Reasoning, this is Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary to Nagarjuna's Fundamental Wisdom. And I think I found what he was reading from. If you have this book, it's on page 232, third paragraph down. So this is in chapter 8, Examination of Agent and Action. So if you do have a copy of that book and you want to look it up, it's page 232. I'm not going to read it, but because it's in the context of a whole other explanation, so it might be helpful to read the whole thing. Venerable Sangye.
I did need some more clarification on Geshe-la's statement about the Vaibhashikas and the Sautantrikas proposing arhatship. They proposed nirvana without remainder. It was the only option they had because of their view of the self-sufficient, substantially existent person. I wasn't quite clear what he was trying to say.
Yeah, that was actually one of the questions on my list, and I was hoping to avoid it. Because I don't know. I might think of something later, but yeah, I didn't understand what he meant by that. Maybe we can write to him and get an answer. Sorry. So.
Geshe-la mentioned the idea of trying to take on the worldview of each of the different systems and progressing that way. And I'd wondered whether you have done that, or whether like how your approach has been, or whether you've done that and what effect that had on yourself, or.
Not really. I did a study of this topic, tenets, back in 1980, I think. And we spent quite a bit of time, 3 months, 5 days a week, 2 hours a day, plus discussion time. And so it was quite a bit of time, but I still feel there's a lot of areas that are difficult to understand. So no, I haven't done that, but I remember hearing Geshe Tashi Tsering from Jamyang Center in London talking about that when in the monasteries, when they are studying these different schools, that they are encouraged by their teachers to adopt these views and act as if, and debate as if they are holding these positions. So yeah, I think that would be very helpful. Profound and powerful to do that. But no, I haven't done that. Well, I'll carry on. There's plenty of questions here, and if any of you have a question, you can interrupt later. Okay, one question is, I may not have time to answer all of these, so if you did send in a question and it doesn't get answered, please don't be upset. So Geshe-la was talking about Greek as the term for what might be described as one's spiritual disposition or potential according to the various schools of thought. How do you spell it? So yeah, it's a Tibetan term, and if you want to look it up in a Tibetan dictionary, it's RIGS. And this term has many, many meanings. For example, type, kind, lineage, reasoning, feasible, suitable, social stratum, class, caste. So it's a very multi-meaning word. But I think in this context, when talking about like the Buddha nature or disposition, it's the Tibetan equivalent of a Sanskrit term, gotra. Venerable Tarpa mentioned that. Gotra, and there's an etymology for that. Go comes from guna, or quality, and tra means to protect. So gotra means to protect the qualities. And it can also mean potential or seed. I like, I've come across various translations, different. Sometimes they translate it as lineage or family, but I like Venerable's choice, disposition, because when studying the ornament of clear realization, which is explained according to the Madhyamika Svatantrika, it explains the whole path to enlightenment, the whole Bodhisattva's path, according to Madhyamika Svatantrika, Yogacara Madhyamika Svatantrika. And there it talks about, there's a whole big section about this topic. And it says that, individual people have different kinds of this disposition. So some are inclined more to the hearer's vehicle, others to the solitary realizer vehicle, others to the Mahayana vehicle. And we can really see that like just in our own experience, like the people, Western people who are attracted to Buddhism. Some, are really attracted to Zen Buddhism. They find Zen Buddhism and that's just perfect for them. Others, Theravada Buddhism, that's just perfect for them. Others, Tibetan Buddhism, that's perfect for them. And, but people sometimes switch. You might start off as Zen and then switch to something else, or start off Tibetan and then switch to something else. So I think that shows that, we do have different tendencies, different interests, and we find a different lineage or a different tradition, different practice that's suited to us. And then, for those who would like to learn more about that, volume 3 of Venerable's the books she's working on, His Holiness's teachings, kind of a contemporary Lamrim. So volume 3 is called Samsara, Nirvana, and Buddha Nature. And chapter 13, which I think is the last chapter in the book. No, it's not the last chapter. Second to the last. It has an explanation about Buddha nature and according to the different schools. So I thought to just go through that because Geshe-la kind of went through it a little quickly and may not have been so clear. So in the two lowest schools, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but the first two schools, Vaibhashika and Sautrantika, they don't actually say Buddha nature or Buddha disposition, but Ariya disposition. Pakperik. And Vaibhashika say that this Ariya disposition, you can read this on page 192 or 292, so don't worry about writing every word down. I'm just going to mention some of it. Page 292 in this book. So the Ariya disposition is the mental factor of non-attachment that acts as a cause for its own resultant Ariya path. Because they, as Geshe-la said, they emphasize craving as a formidable cause of cyclic existence. So it makes sense that they would say that non-attachment is the antidote to craving and the disposition in sentient beings that has the potential to bring the realizations of the Ariya path and liberation. So they say the antidote to craving is, what did Geshe-la say? Contentment, yeah, contentment, or non-attachment. And so there are these four things that we are encouraged to be content with, about. So an Ariya disposition has these four qualities. Being satisfied with whatever food or drink. Remember that one? Be content with food and drink. And the second is shelter. And the third is robes. Huh? Yeah, no, but the fourth, so food and drink is one, shelter is two, robes is three. And the fourth quality is taking joy in meditation and in overcoming what is to be abandoned. So we need to cultivate the first three. We need to learn to be content with food and drink, robes, shelter. And on the basis of that, our attachment will cool down, and then we'll be able to meditate better and be able to cultivate concentration and wisdom and so on and progress along the path. So that's why those qualities are important to make progress on the path. So those are the four qualities of the Ariya disposition. And then the Sautrantika, Geshe-la said he couldn't remember what they say, but in here it says for the Sautrantikas, the disposition is the potential or seed for the arising of the unpolluted mind, the pristine wisdom of the Aryas. So that sounds like what he said for the Chittamatra school, but I guess it's also for the Sautrantikas. So it's a seed to be able to generate the wisdom of an Arya. And all sentient beings do have this potential. And both Vaibhasikas and Sautrantikas say that not all sentient beings will become Buddhas. So most sentient beings will attain the state of Arhat, Nirvana. And then the Chittamatrans, they say that, here they do use the term Buddha, Buddha Gotra, Sangye Rig. And they say that this is a seed or latency or potency that has existed since beginningless time and has the potential to bring about the three Buddha bodies, the Nirmanakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Dharmakaya. And so for them, it's something impermanent. It's like a seed. So it's an impermanent, conditioned phenomena. So all sentient beings have this in their mind. It's been in our mind for beginningless time. And before it's nourished by hearing the Dharma, hearing, thinking, and meditating, those three things. So before we start doing that, then this seed is called a naturally abiding Buddha disposition. And then when it has been nourished, once we do start to practice hearing, thinking, and meditating, then it becomes the transforming Buddha disposition. So this is just brief, but there's a lot more in here. So I encourage you to have a look at the book. And then the Majjhimika, they also have these two terms of the naturally abiding Buddha disposition and the transforming Buddha disposition, but they explain it differently. The naturally abiding Buddha disposition, what we normally call Buddha nature, is the emptiness of a mind that is not yet free of defilements. Geshe-la was saying a defiled mind. Meaning a sentient being's mind, a mind that hasn't yet reached enlightenment, still has stains, obscurations in it. So the emptiness of inherent existence of that kind of mind is the naturally abiding Buddha disposition. And it's been there forever, from beginningless time. It's always there, and it can never be damaged, destroyed in any way. It's always there. And this is what will transform into the nature Dharmakaya, the Svabhavakaya, when we become a Buddha, the emptiness of a Buddha's mind. Then the other kind of Buddha nature or Buddha disposition is the transforming one. And these consist of conditioned phenomena that will transform into the wisdom Dharmakaya, the Buddha's mind, the mind of a Buddha. So they include mental consciousness, not all mental consciousnesses, but those that are neutral mental consciousnesses. And also virtuous mental factors, love, compassion, faith, and so on, wisdom. So we have these in our mind, again, probably from beginningless time, because I was thinking, if they didn't exist from beginningless time, that means they would have had to arise at a certain point in time. From what? From what would they arise? It can only arise from the same type of mind, right? Compassion arises from compassion. This is what we've been learning in Pramanavartika. So how could it just suddenly appear in our mind, not having been there before? So I asked this question to one Western Geshe, and he said, yeah, it makes sense. If afflictions have been in our mind from beginningless time, then virtuous mental factors should also have been in our mind from beginningless time. The same reason, the same reason is there. So I like to think that way. I like to think everybody's mind has had compassion and love and faith and so on existing in the mind from beginningless time. But sometimes they get kind of buried and there are a lot of other stuff. Sometimes they're not very strong, but they're there. And they can be nourished, cultivated further, more and more and more, and then become Buddha qualities. So that's part of our transforming Buddha disposition. Or sometimes it's called a developing Buddha nature. I forget other terms for it. Okay, so anyway, that's just a bit about the disposition according to the different schools, and you can read more about it in volume 3. Okay, so another question is about bodhisattvas being able to return for the benefit of all sentient beings by preserving a pure desire without attachment to liberate sentient beings, taking rebirth again and again continuously as bodhisattva. They do say this in the ornament for clear realizations. And of course, everybody would agree that a bodhisattva, it's just part of being a bodhisattva that you make the vow, the commitment to remain in samsara and keep coming back again and again and again to help sentient beings and not go into the state of solitary peace, of nirvana, just enjoying the bliss of nirvana, but continue to take birth again and again. So it's said that, this is true for Ariya bodhisattvas who have had a direct realization of emptiness and have started to completely eliminate the obscurations in their mind once and for all. So from that point on, becoming an Ariya bodhisattva, they are able to take rebirth in samsara, not in the usual way, from karma and afflictions, delusions and karma, but through compassion and prayer. So those are the factors whereby bodhisattvas are born in samsara. They're not thrown into rebirth like we are, because our karma and our delusions throw us into rebirths, but they choose to take rebirths through through compassion and prayer. And they promise to do this until samsara is empty, until there's no more sentient beings in samsara. And it is said, this came up in the ornament for clear realizations, that bodhisattvas can use desire to benefit sentient beings. This is in Sutrayana. In Tantra, of course, they talk about using the afflictions like desire to benefit sentient beings, but that's another thing. But even in Sutrayana, they can use desire. But the only example that our teacher was able to come up with was producing many children who can enact the welfare of others. So I guess that's written somewhere in the sutras. That's how they use desire for the benefit of sentient beings, making lots of kids, and then I guess training those kids to benefit others. So I don't know if that's what this person was asking about in the question. But yeah, it's not self-centered desire like ordinary beings have, but it's, still some desire there, but utilizing the desire, utilizing the attachment to benefit sentient beings and to benefit the Dharma. Okay, another question. Emptiness, like consciousness, also has temporal parts. For example, this moment of emptiness, the next moment of emptiness, and so on. I don't think that's correct because emptiness is something permanent, meaning it doesn't change. It isn't momentary. So you can't talk about different moments of emptiness. Now, again, emptiness is the quality of impermanent things. So the body, our bodies, they are impermanent. They are changing moment by moment by moment. And so our bodies have different moments. First moment of our body, next moment of our body, and so on and so forth. And then we can say the emptiness of our body. But I don't think you would, I just don't, it doesn't sound right. It's even our bodies changing moment by moment. I don't think we can say that the emptiness is changing moment by moment. But each moment of our body does have emptiness as its ultimate nature. But yeah, when they talk about the parts of emptiness, how emptiness is dependent on its parts, they talk about emptiness of different phenomena, my body, your body, the table, this table, that table, and so on. So each phenomena having its own emptiness. Okay, another question. how can an object exist without a mind? If I don't see it, then it doesn't exist. In other words, does something only truly exist if it is seen by my mind? So I did talk about this yesterday, about how mind and object are interdependent, because you can never have a mind without an object. And also objects depend on mind, depend on being known by mind, because the very definition of an object, what is an object, is that which is realized by a mind, that which is realized by an awareness. So if it's not realized by a mind, if it's not known by a mind, experienced by a mind, then it's not an object. An object and existent are synonymous. So whatever exists is an object, and whatever is an object exists. And now there's these 8 different terms that are synonymous: object, existent, phenomenon, what else? Established base, knowable object.
Specifically characterized phenomena.
Yeah. Yeah.
Object comprehension, object comprehension.
Yeah, there's all these different terms that are said to be synonymous. And most of these terms, the definition also relates to mind, known by mind, established by mind, experienced by mind. So it seems pretty clear that an object does need to be known by mind. However, just because my mind doesn't see something, does that mean it doesn't exist? Or even if we say human minds in general, you know, human minds, there's certain things that human minds are able to know and other things that we don't know. Would it be right to say that something doesn't exist because human minds are not able to perceive it? I mean, we do that. We do tend to think that way. But is that correct? Just because my mind or human minds in general do not perceive something, does that mean there aren't other minds? What about other minds? I mean, this is what Buddhism does. Buddhism says there are lots of other sentient beings, lots of other beings. And their minds may be able to see things that we can't see, perceive things that we can't see. But then I guess people would say, but how do we know that? Who are these beings? Where are they? How do I know what they can see? Well, it said that in the text. In the text, the Buddhist text, going back to the time of the Buddha, I mean, the Buddha himself, you know, it said that he is omniscient. He can see everything, everything that exists. There's nothing that cannot be known or seen or experienced by the mind of a Buddha. And even before Buddhahood, as your mind develops more and more, clears up, becomes more and more free of obscurations, and more concentrated, more and more focused, your ability to see more and more things increases. So this has been verified, not just Buddha, but many practitioners over the ages have trained their minds and verified that this is possible, that it is possible to see and experience more and more things that one couldn't perceive earlier when one was just an ordinary person. So I don't know, looking at this question, it kind of made me think that our Western way of thinking seems to be very human-centric, almost like we don't take into account other kinds of beings, even animals. Well, they don't count. Well, some people do. Some people realize that dogs can smell things that we can't and even see things that we can't. Some people realize that. But generally, we tend to be quite human-centric. And then as individuals, I think we tend to be self-centered. You know, we tend to think, well, if I can't see it, it doesn't exist. For example, with past and future lives. You know, there's lots of course, in the scriptures, lots of talk about past lives and future lives. Lots of stories of people who remember past lives and future lives. But still people tend to say, well, I can't remember any of my past lives. I can't see past lives and future lives. Therefore, I don't believe it. I don't think they exist. So I think we have this tendency. And is it right? Is it right to deny the existence of something just because we don't see it? It isn't something appearing to our minds. And this may be also why some people deny climate change. I don't see any changes in the climate. What are these people making all that noise about? There's no climate change. Everything's just fine. I don't experience any racism. Racism doesn't exist. So lots of problems in society and in the world when people, are very stubborn and deny the existence of things just because they don't perceive it. So I think it's good to keep an open mind and recognize that our mind is limited. Our mind is not capable of seeing everything that exists or experiencing everything that exists. But at the same time, as the Dalai Lama says, we do need to be skeptical and not just blindly believe in things that other people may talk about, but we don't experience. We need to use our wisdom, discriminating wisdom, and investigate to see if they're true or not. So I'll keep going unless somebody here has something. So.
If you have an impermanent object like my body, and it's changing moment by moment, the emptiness of my body is not changing, but does each moment have a separate emptiness in terms of, like, I don't know, if can there be a permanent emptiness to a continuum, like one emptiness, or is it more like with each moment it changes, like,
That's a good question.
Because when my
Does seem
computer
to make-
breaks,
Yeah.
the emptiness of my computer ceases when it becomes not a computer anymore, but something else, pieces. But
I mean, just what pops up into my mind, I don't know for sure. I've never heard anyone talk about this. I've never been part of a discussion about it. But yeah, if we say our body is changing moment by moment and one moment ceases before the next moment arises, right? So each moment of our body is in a way unique, different from the others. So it seems like you could say that each moment of our body has its own emptiness. And so there's the emptiness of moment A, the emptiness of moment B, the emptiness of moment C. But does that mean the emptiness itself is changing? I don't think so. And even within one moment, one moment of emptiness, does that change? It's not a changeable phenomena. So maybe there is something to this question that, we can talk about different moments of emptiness, of an impermanent phenomenon. Possible, but I'm just not sure. I don't know for sure. Is that kind of what you were getting at? Or something else? Huh? Yeah, I mean, it's possible. It's just not something I've ever heard talked about, discussed in any of the teachings, but maybe it's true. So this question says, thank you, I think meaning Geshe-la. Thank you, Geshe-la, for your clear explanation on the dependence of causes on effects. I was familiar with the semantic aspect, but not the deeper aspect. It seems that this is also a strong refutation of nihilism. Phenomena being merely imputed does not mean anything goes. For something to function as a fire depends on it being a cause for all the effects of fire, including smoke, heat, light, ash, and all the rest. In dependence on all these effects, we impute fire. Is this a correct understanding? Well, I don't know, but it sounds correct. So he seems to be saying, or she, yeah, something being a cause depends on the effects. I mean, if we take a non-smokeless fire, if we take a fire that does produce smoke, but even a smokeless fire would produce other things like heat, light, maybe. So it does produce results, effects. So in dependence on the effects that are being produced, then we label or impute the expression fire onto it. I think it seems to be true. Okay, another question. The 8th and 9th links of dependent origination are clinging and grasping, which are levels of desire. It is said that this is one of 2 places the chain of links can be cut. I think I've heard that within the Theravada tradition, the Pali tradition. I'm not quite sure what that means. What does it mean to cut the 12 links? Does anyone know? Has anyone studied that? Heard teachings on that?
We've had teachings on it, but we have different interpretations of what we've heard.
Different interpretations. You mean among yourselves? Who taught it?
Yeah, but when did we get it? Which text was it? Venerable has taught it a few times. But I can't remember now which text it was, but so we have different ideas about what that means.
Because I'm not, sorry?
Between feeling and feeling.
But what does it mean to cut? To eliminate completely the 12 links? Yeah. I was wondering if maybe cut means stopping karma from ripening. Because even if you have karmic seeds in your mind, but for them to ripen, like to produce a rebirth, you need those factors of craving and grasping, or clinging and grasping. Those are like the nourishment for the karma to produce a rebirth. So maybe the meaning of cut, I'm not sure, is to stop the karma from turning into a rebirth. But I don't know if that will completely eliminate the 12 links altogether, because my understanding is that if the first link of the 12 links, ignorance, if that still exists in the mind, our mind still has ignorance in it, then that will lead to the second link of karmic formations, will produce karmic formations, even if they're virtuous ones, even if they're good karma that will bring about a good rebirth within samsara. But it's still, the cycle of samsara is still going around and around and around. So to me, I can't see how cutting the 8th and 9th links would stop the 12 links and enable one to be free of samsara. That's my understanding. And Prasangika says the only way to completely eliminate samsara, the 12 links, rebirth, craving, grasping, and so on, is by realizing emptiness. Emptiness of inherent existence, because ignorance of that is what produces craving and desire and so on and so forth. So other methods that we might use could suppress craving and desire and attachment. They might suppress them, they get them under control, but that doesn't mean they've been eliminated and they will stop altogether. That's my understanding, but I don't know everything, so there could be a lot more to it than that. Okay, another question is, I can follow the Yogacara thinking as to how the mind experiences objects like an apple, an elephant in the room, and so forth, but it's not clear to me how they approach other types of human experiences like Tsongkhapa's interactions with Manjushri. Is there a difference? Would they say Tsongkhapa simply conjured up the interaction in his mind? I don't know what they would say about that, but somehow I don't think so. I would think, I don't know how they would explain Tsongkhapa having a vision of Manjushri and having discussions with Manjushri. Of course, it would depend on seeds within the mind of Lama Tsongkhapa ripening and producing this experience. But I would imagine they would still say that Manjushri does exist. There is a being, whether he's Buddha or Bodhisattva, who has those qualities of being Manjushri, and that so there was actually some interaction going on, but the way it appeared to Lama Tsongkhapa's mind would have been the ripening of seeds in his mind. I mean, it's similar with each other. You know, we see each other, and according to Chittamatra, my understanding of Chittamatra is, it isn't the case that they would say that all of you are just projected by my mind, just coming from my mind. You're not really there. You just, my mind is kind of magically creating all of you. They don't say that. That would be crazy. Because then otherwise the whole world and all sentient beings and even Buddha and enlightenment, all of that is just coming from my mind. They don't go that far. That's what's called solipsism, which is a view that I'm the only thing that exists in the universe. Everything else is just coming from my mind. So that they don't say that. That's not the meaning of mind only. So they would still say that you guys are there, you venerables are there, and other sentient beings are there, including Buddha, including Manjushri. But it's the way they appear to my mind, the way all of you appear to my mind, that is coming from the seeds in my mind. So, no, I don't think they would say that Tsongkhapa was just totally imagining this interaction in his mind. Okay, well, I think there's just one more question that I could answer. And it's actually coming from the same person who asked a question yesterday about abstract composites, and also asked a question on Saturday to Venerable children about abstract composites. And so, there's a question there. I won't read the whole thing because it's a bit long and complicated, but I did talk with Venerable children about it, and her recommendation to this person is to listen again to her answer, the answer that she gave on Saturday, because the person seems to be confused about different meanings of imputation, because all Buddhist schools, not just Prasangika, all Buddhist schools do talk about imputation. For example, person. A person is said to be imputed on the aggregates. Person is imputed on a collection of body and mind, the 5 aggregates. So that's something all the Buddhist schools agree about. Sometimes they say independent, sometimes they just say on. But anyway, it's imputed. And there is this expression, imputedly existent. Yeah, and there are certain phenomena that are said to be imputedly existent. And the meaning of that, the reason for something being imputedly existent, is for that phenomena to appear to our mind, other things that are not it have to appear to our mind. So for example, a person, if I say Venerable Samten is a person. So for Venerable Samten to appear to our mind, it's necessary for her body. We can't see her mind. I can't see her mind. So her body has to appear. And her body is not her. The body of a person is not the person. The body of a person is part of the basis of designation of person, but is not a person. So to be able to see a person, something that's not the person has to appear to the mind. That's the meaning of imputedly existent, something that is imputedly existent. Another example, I think, is forest. Forest is what we call a group of trees that are all growing together in the same place. I don't know what's the minimum number of trees to have the name forest. I think just 2 or 3 trees wouldn't qualify as a forest. There has to be quite a few trees. And they all have to be alive, standing up, not dead, cut over, cut down or burned down. So we have lots of forests around here. So for forest, in order for our forest to appear to our mind, it's necessary for trees to appear to our mind. And trees are not a forest. Each individual tree is not a forest. But if you have a whole bunch of trees in the same place, then we can call that forest. Another example is army. We have the term army, but what's an army? How do we see an army? Can we see an army? I mean, if there's a bunch of soldiers in a place and they've got their uniforms and their gear and their weapons and maybe they're marching along, then we can say, oh, I see an army over there. But what are we actually seeing? We're seeing, yeah, soldiers and their stuff. So these are examples of imputedly existing things, things that are imputedly existing. For them to appear to our mind, for a person or a forest or an army to appear to our mind, other things have to appear, which are not those things. That's the meaning of imputedly existent. So this is something all the schools would agree on. Even the Vaibhashikas, Sautrantikas. However, when they talk about things being imputed in this way, they are not talking about emptiness of inherent existence because they still see all these things as existing inherently, existing objectively, existing truly, independently, and so on. They're not refuting inherent existence or objective existence. So when the other schools talk about a person being imputedly existing, they're not refuting a person being inherently existing. Does that make sense? So when Prasangika talk about something being imputed, merely imputed by the mind, like car, for example, car is just imputed by the mind, they're talking about something else. They're talking about merely imputed in the sense of refuting, negating, denying inherent existence, independent existence. But as we know, understanding that is not easy. To really understand what it means to be merely imputed, merely designated by the mind is difficult, maybe even, as Geshe-la said, you might be able to understand that first before realizing emptiness, but perhaps for some of us, we have to first understand emptiness before we can really understand that. So that's very deep, very profound. So it's important to understand these. There are different meanings of being imputed by the mind or imputedly existent. So don't mix those up. So yeah, again, it's good to listen to what Venerable Children said. I wasn't here on Saturday. Was anyone here and took notes? Do you have notes? You want to read?
One thing from 12 links found in Buddhism, one teacher, many traditions.
Going back to the.
So you were talking, the question came about the 12 links, and in the book by His Holiness that Venerable Children put together called Buddhism, One Teacher, Many Traditions, And I think this section seems to be from the Pali Canon. They're talking about the 12 links. And they say between feeling and craving is a place, and what they say about that is one place where the forward motion of dependent arising can be broken is between feelings and craving. Feelings naturally arise as a result of previous karma. By applying mindfulness and introspective awareness to our feelings, observing them as they are, impermanent, unsatisfactory, and selfless, we won't react to them with any of these three types of craving. Then the feelings will arise and pass away without the arising of craving, clinging, and the remaining links. In this way, the Aryas and Arhats experience feeling without craving. But then when you go on to the, she's doing it from 12 to 1 in this list. And when you get to 1, which is ignorance, it says, only when ignorance is eradicated do all formative actions and samsaric rebirth cease. So it seems to be a stopgap measure.
I think in this book too, volume. Yeah, this one also has the 12 links. Yeah, so this, because this is a much thicker book. So yeah, this would have much more information about the 12 links, chapters 7 and 8 and 9. Yeah. But anyway, it does say that even in the Pali tradition, it's necessary to cut the first link of ignorance to completely end the whole thing. I just want to say one more thing about this question. I was just talking about, because in the newest version of the question that was sent, it's Bilan, I think, Bilan. Yeah, she's referring to things that exist conventionally, according to Prasangika. Whatever exists conventionally. And she's referring to these as imputations. And this makes me think that maybe she's thinking of something like a car. You know, we say a car is merely imputed onto its parts, all the different parts of the car, the collection of the parts and so on. So car is just imputed onto the parts of the car, cannot be found anywhere within those parts. None of the parts individually, nor the whole collection of the parts. So we can't find car anywhere in the parts, the basis of imputation. But then she's referring to this as being an imputation. Car is an imputation. I think that might be the problem. If you think of the car, it seems like then she's still thinking the car is something findable. You can find the car as an imputation. But that's not what the Prasangikas say. They don't say the car is an imputation. They say the car is merely imputed. It's merely imputed. It cannot be found. So if you think, oh, the car is an imputation, and then she's thinking an imputation is must be a, what's that called? Abstract composite, like person. So I think that may be the problem there. Instead of thinking of car as an imputation, think of car as merely imputed, not findable anywhere. You cannot find anything you can point to as being the car. But this is so hard because it goes completely against our gut feeling. You know, we feel, oh, there has to be a car there somewhere. I have to find the car somewhere. To say you can't find it is just really scary. It's really unsettling. So I can see that in my mind as well. It's like, it's got to be there somewhere. So we're trying desperately to find something we can pinpoint as being the car. So I think maybe that might be what's happening here. Okay.
Composites. What merely imputed, what she was referring to, form, mind, and then the miscellaneous grab bag of abstract composites. what merely imputed means in that case, in order to perceive an abstract composite, you have to perceive something else, just like you said. To perceive a person, you have to perceive the body, speech, or mind. You don't actually have to see the person. You impute person when you see the body, hear the speech. So in that way, they are imputed. Time is also imputed. In order to have time, you need an hour, and to have an hour, you need to perceive all the minutes. So all of these abstract composites, you have to be able to impute, to perceive something else, like you said, with the army, the person. So the merely imputed refers to on the basis of.
That's the meaning of merely imputed.
Imputed,
That's
right.
common to all the schools, not
Right,
exclusive to
Right, but that was
Prasangika.
what she said
Yeah.
with the abstract composites the other day.
So what we need to do when it comes to tenets and Buddhist philosophy is to have a very open mind and not think that a term that means one thing in one context means that exact same in every other context. That's hard. I know. I used to get really upset about this. Why can't they, be consistent? But it's like that. And I think it's because Buddhism has been developing 2,500, almost 2,600 years, many different places, many different teachers, masters, philosophers, debaters, writers, and so on. And also, and they didn't have internet, and they didn't have dictionaries where they could, pinpoint exactly what a term means. So they would use these same terms in different ways. So we have to accept that. And it is confusing. It is complicated, but understand that the same term can mean different things in different contexts. So in this case, the term imputed or merely imputed, used by all the schools in common, has a different meaning than when that term is used exclusively by the Prasangikas when they're talking about the way things exist. So, but it takes time to get all this, and I'm still struggling with it. So I think that's pretty much it. Oh, there was one more question here. If we have this subtle, clear light mind that goes from life to life, doesn't that suggest something inherent and not changing? No. What is mind? What kind of phenomena is mind? Is it permanent or impermanent? Impermanent. Even the subtle, clear light mind, the subtlest level of mind, it's mind. Mind is always impermanent, meaning it's changing moment by moment by moment by moment. So even though it never had a beginning, it will never have an end. It's kind of eternal in that sense. But within that, it's still changing moment by moment by moment by moment by moment. So it's not unchanging, and it's not inherent, because when you try to look for this clear light mind, I mean, it's very hard for us to look for it. We can't even experience it. But if you did, and you tried to pinpoint, what is this? Does it exist from its own side, inherently, objectively, independently? No, it's dependent. It's dependent on its previous moment, giving rise to the next moment. And probably also on parts. It must have parts. It's a continuum. So it's one moment, next moment, next moment. So those are its parts. And it's so dependent on being labeled. We call it clear light mind. It's not clear light mind from its own side. That's just what we call it, the name given to it by Buddhist philosophers, or the Buddha himself. He's the one who spoke about it. And I guess in the third turning of the wheel, also in the Tantras. So that's it for the questions. Any last ones from here? Venerable Kunga.
There's a question that came in online. For the practices of accumulating merit and purifying negativities, do these correspond with transforming Buddha disposition for accumulating merit and naturally abiding Buddha disposition for purifying negativities?
I don't quite see that. I mean, the naturally abiding Buddha nature, according to Madhyamika is the emptiness of the mind. And that's always there and doesn't change. It needs, well, naturally, it's naturally pure in the sense that even though our mind has defilements in it, like greed, hatred, ignorance, all the obscurations, our mind has those defilements, but like Geshe-la was saying this morning, they're not permanent. They're not in the nature of the mind and impossible to be removed. So they can be removed, but they don't taint the emptiness of the mind. I mean, the emptiness of the mind cannot be tainted by anything, cannot be stained by anything, because it's a permanent phenomena. If it could be stained, it would have to be impermanent, and it's not. It's permanent. So I think the emptiness of the mind, I can't see how that can be related to purification. The mind itself needs to be purified. The obscurations, the afflictions, the karma, they need to be purified, but not the emptiness of the mind. And what was the first part about the transforming?
Just asking if that corresponds with accumulating merit.
I mean, the process, of course, to actualize our Buddha nature, to make it manifest, to transform our mind into enlightened mind, we have to accumulate merit. We have to do purification. So when we do purification and accumulation of merit, that will affect our transforming Buddha nature. Those are impermanent phenomena, so they can be affected. So I think like Geshe-la said, when we would do, increasing love, increasing compassion, that's part of our transforming Buddha nature, then the anger, hatred will naturally decrease and disappear. So definitely the practices of purification and accumulation of merit will affect our transforming Buddha nature.